rock around the clock. It is the Savage Nation Publication Day, kickoff day, November 14th, 2017. Remember that it's the book that changed a lot of lives, changed a lot of lives, changed a lot of lives. Now, you expect me to sit here and talk about the book all day, and I may or may not do that. I'm going to tell you about Henry's funeral. I will tell you about Rabbi in a Brothel, which is a fiction. I will tell you about my silent brother. I will tell you how the left in America is laying the groundwork to kill Americans. I will tell you about survival stories where I know God's hand came down to protect me and things like that. A friend in New York sent me a note this morning. First, I want to thank the Drudge Report for featuring my book. And I'll drop it the minute I say, no, it's been up there almost 24 hours. It's unbelievable. I mean, I got to tell you, Savage Finds God, talk host on Spiritual Odyssey. Go click on those links. I am banned in the media, with rare exception, and yet this placement on the Drudge Report superseded all of the other things put together. All of it. All of it. What does he have, 4 billion page views a day? So all I can say is somebody up there likes me, and I do have a few friends. I wish I could say that I had a lot of friends. I wish I could say all the people in the media were fair-minded. But we can't. That's not the way it is. So I received an email from my friend Jeff Rovin in New York, fabulous writer, and I was lamenting certain things about the fact that I'm blocked at certain television channels. And he said, Michael, consider how few people show up for any sermon, and among those who do, how few take home a message of value. Michael, you will reach more people today and over the next few days than any rabbi or preacher in any congregation through the entirety of his career has ever reached. That is no small thing. And then I talked about the vicious lawyers attacking through innuendo and killing people without anything. They don't care. They destroy people. Just destroy people based on no evidence. We have now become guilty. J'accuse out of the French Revolution. I talked about one particular vicious subhuman, and he said she is such a grandstander, she files claims to make a point, but more than half the time she drops them because there's no evidence. It is one of her in the legal profession's most contemptible qualities, convict people by innuendo, not evidence. Then he said this, when you think about how much the left has in common with the Nazis, it's truly disturbing. A propaganda-driven press, thank you Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper, conviction of people without jury, more, organized hate against the group, the religious right, businesses branded as Christian instead of Juden. See, in Nazi Germany, they branded businesses as owned by Jews. They said Juden, and they said don't shop there. Today, the left brands businesses as Christian. See how that works? People afraid to speak of their political beliefs, and now we're sterilizing men both figuratively and literally, calling them transgenders. Yeah, well, that's a heavy-duty thing. Just warming you up now in the Savage Nation. This came to us from Comey the Clown, who wrote California, the Liberal Cesspool. He said, California's a cesspool and not worth living in. I know, I was born there, left to serve in the military for 12 years, and then returned to find it had become a nightmare. For example, I used to ride the bus every day. It cost a quarter and it was clean and safe, and I never had a problem. Today the bus is dirty, it's smelly, and is overrun with druggy, homeless, illegal immigrant human debris, and there is no way in heck I would let my kids ride on it. When you go downtown in San Francisco, there are homeless bums everywhere, sleeping, panhandling, fighting, mugging. Every bus stop, bench, fountain, or public seat is occupied by these people who are little more than a waste of DNA. They defecate between parked cars at night, urinate in doorways, break into buildings, deal their dope, and generally have transformed the Golden State into an unflushed you-know-what. Thanks to the leftists who have run this state for the last 30 years. Yeah, it's terrible to see what they've done to this city and state. And I wake up every day and I thank God for living here. Because what they did not create, God created. For example, I woke up this morning to a bay covered with fog, and I heard the foghorns. And I love the fog and the foghorns. It makes my day. I went out and fed the seagulls a bagel. I had one bagel, one old bagel. I broke it into 6-8 pieces. I have 2 seagulls off my little house. I call them Donald and Daisy. And they wait for me. I was gone for 2 weeks. I guess I don't know, they're not starving before they met me. I threw 2 pieces and they'll fight over it. So I throw another one to the other side, and the other one gets it. All of a sudden comes the swarm. I threw all the other pieces, and of course there weren't enough for all of them. So what's the moral of the story? Nothing that you don't know already. Survival of the fittest. Darwinian moment. Survival of the fittest. The swiftest and strongest birds got the bread. The slowest and the dumbest birds did not get the bread. In America today, the reverse is true. The dumbest and the slowest are getting the best of everything in this country. The schools are bending over backwards for the twisted, the moronic, the incapable. The smart kids are being shunted as the evil ones. In America, well, do I have to go down the list and give you my laments? I'm not into the Job's tears right now. I'm giving you some examples of how the left in America is laying the groundwork to destroy not only the country, but people themselves, the American people. And I can tell you all about the Pol Pot story in Cambodia, how a little college teacher named Pol Pot went to Paris to study Marxism, and he became infatuated with Marxism, and he thought it was a great system, that it was very fair, and he wanted to bring fairness to Cambodia because he didn't think it was fair. There was inequality in Cambodia, he thought, after he had come back from Paris, Pol Pot did. And he introduced Marxism, thinking it would bring fairness. But soon it didn't bring fairness, so he unleashed the Khmer Rouge on the middle class. Who were the Khmer Rouge? Who were they? 13-year-old thugs. He gave them red scarves, the Khmer Rouge, red scarves. The red scarves, the Khmer Rouge. Who are the red scarves in America today? You don't know who the red scarves are, the Khmer Rouge today, used by the left? You don't know who they are today? The groups that call themselves Certain Lives Matter, they're not the red scarves of today? Oh, no, you don't remember what happened in Ferguson, the lie, put out by Wolf Blitzer, put out by Jake Tapper, put out by Mad Cow? All of those people made up a story that was not true, and the cities burned. They are the Pol Pots of our time. They're not the muscle in the street. The muscle in the street are the Khmer Rouge of today. Where does it end? It ends with a mountain of human skulls. Just remember what happened with Pol Pot in Cambodia, because not only can it happen here, it is happening here. Everything starts with words, and then it ends in deeds. I will remind you that the Holocaust did not start in Germany. The Holocaust started in an intellectual publication in Paris 50 years before. It was a French anti-Semite who wrote about the Jews. That led to the death camps. Just remember, everything starts with ideas. And although Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer and Rachel Madcow may look like just benign neighbors, remember that their words are poison. They're poisoning the minds of millions and laying the groundwork for a mountain of skulls. And it can happen here. And that's my message for today. Now, having introduced all of that, let's go to the book, God, Faith, and Reason. What does it have to do with the left and Marxism? It's the opposite of the left and Marxism. Let me explain it to you if you don't know. Now, you can understand this if you get the bigger picture. It's easy, actually, very easy. What does the left believe in? Central government. What does centralized government that becomes too powerful become? All-powerful. What does an all-powerful government do? It controls everything you do, everything you eat, everything you drink, everything you think, everything you speak must be filtered through the central government. That's communism. That's Marxism. That's Hillary Clinton. That's the Democrat Party. What does America stand for? The opposite. Individualism. Individualism. Self-will. Individualism. Free will. Which religion teaches free will? Christianity. Judaism. We believe in God. God gives us free will. When you believe in God, you come to understand that God may have created everything and created us, but we have free will. It's the opposite of government will. Do you understand where this comes from? Do you understand the difference between the left and the right and how dangerous left-wing thinking actually is? Now you understand why they're beating people up, why they're attacking police, why they're killing the police, because they're coming for you. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've been at this a very long time. I've been reading everything I get my hands on since I'm 15 years old, maybe before that. I've been writing since I'm 16 years old. Count me on that one. And now I come up with my sine qua non, my number one book, the most important book I ever wrote, which is God, Faith, and Reason. And I will tell you this, it's not dashed off to sell a book. It is the book that I think could save America. Now, if you think it's megalomaniacal, welcome to the club. I think this book could save America. If I can bring enough people back to understand the difference between left and right, between God and Satan, between survival and digging their own graves, then I will have done my job. I'll be right back. So, look, let me tell you something. Those of us in talk radio write books. And when we write books, we talk about our books for a week or two. That's what we do. It's around the holiday time. God, Faith, and Reason will be in every bookstore up front for the next 2 weeks. It's going to do well. Trust me on that. But that's not the point. The point is it's not just a book to be consumed and discarded. It has a message in it that should last beyond 2 weeks or 2 months. So, I was thinking about it during the break. I said, you know, Michael, someone listening to you might say you take yourself too seriously, right? Isn't that what you're thinking? You out there in Radio Land? Who is this guy? You know, I like his voice, but he's taking himself too seriously. Who does he really think he is? Let me explain something to you. Some of us have to take ourselves real seriously. That's part of the control mechanism that's been used for ages in this country, such as, you know, relax, don't take yourself too seriously. Or remember the 60s when the libs first started in a very benign way to say, don't be judgmental? Remember those words? Don't be judgmental, when you saw how vile they were, how disgusting they were, the dirty things they were doing with each other. Remember they were saying to you, don't be judgmental? My answer is be very judgmental. Just as you judge everything that you do in your life, even if you're a leftist, you do, don't you? Don't you judge what you eat? Of course you do. You judge everyone else when you sit down to eat, don't you? You're a vegan. You're a vegan, a megan, a hegan, a degan. And you say, well, I'm judging what I'm eating because it's important that I put the right thing in my body. Isn't that being judgmental? Of course it is. So you're being judgmental with regard to your own survival. And those of us who want America to survive have to be more judgmental than ever before. And we must override those of you who look at us and say, don't be judgmental. At least I think so anyway. And now on to God, Faith, and Reason, because today is kickoff day. Have you been to your local bookstore to find the book? Did you have trouble finding the book at the bookstore? What have book clerks told you? Were they sneering? Was the book front and center in the store, or was it buried? Did you purchase one copy for yourself, or did you buy one for your liberal neighbor as well to prevent him from attacking you with a lawnmower? Who do you think needs to read this book more than you do? Are you planning on having the courage to carry this book on the bus, subway, or displaying it in your office? Will you talk to people about my book and its message? Have you had any confrontations about this book? What are you most interested in reading in this book? What is your favorite part of the book? What would you do when you finish reading this book? And finally, what about the book that I wrote makes you feel that it is the definitive book to lead America back to the standards we hold in esteem? Do you think God, Faith, and Reason should be my last book? Or should I consider doing another? Those are some of the questions on the Savage Nation. We open it up to you. 855-407-282. Let's go to Pat on KLIF. Pat, what's on your mind on the Savage Nation?
Thank you, Dr. Savage, for everything that you do. You outline every day on the radio why the mainstream media fears you. Is that because you tell the truth? And it's that simple. They fear the truth because it's not part of what they...
Well, I thought about what you're saying is very interesting. It's not so much they fear me, is that they despise me. And the reason they despise me is because I just outlined the difference between centralized control, mass mind control run by the media and the government, and individual liberty, individual rights, and individual thinking. And the last thing the media moguls want is for you to think for yourself. They want you to be malleable, they want you to be easily swayed, and they want to lead you down the golden path of slavery. They cannot have that. How can one man called Michael Savage have more power over their mind than someone who runs NBC or ABC? How is that possible? Well, do I? I don't. They put out their product every day of the week, and they reach far larger numbers than I do. But the fact of the matter is they don't want any dissenting voices in this country. And I want to remind you of something else. If Hillary Clinton had won, I wouldn't be on the radio today. I can almost guarantee you that by now, almost a year into her dictatorship, we would have had a compression of the First Amendment. We would have had a compression of radio, a compression of television, a compression of websites, and people like myself would not be on the radio. Now, you may say, good, I hope you're not on the radio. Well, think very, very carefully if that's what you want. Because if you want no dissent, if you really don't want the true resistance, and you want to be standing out there with your neck on the block, go ahead and get rid of the people like me, because you'll be next. The guillotine is an endlessly thirsty instrument, as we learned in the French Revolution. It started by cutting off the heads of the counter-revolutionaries. And then when all of them were gone, who did the revolutionaries turn on? They turned on themselves and started killing each other. That guillotine is very thirsty. It has an endless taste for blood. The same is going on in this country today with the war on men. The war on men being conducted by two of the most vicious lawyers the world has ever seen. Demons in skirts, inventing smears without proof, destroying lives without any care for what happens to the individuals. This is a form of the guillotine of the media. And now you know the rest of the story. Pat, stay in the line. I'm sending you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason. I've been up since 5 in the morning, happily so. These are great days in my life. I would be remiss not to share them with you. I was on the radio this morning on KSFO, my local affiliate. I then was on the Alex Jones show. I meant to be on for 20 minutes because he and I get started. I was on for an hour. He just gets me going. And here I am now ready to do another 2.5 hours. I wish there was a show waiting for me afterwards on television, but there won't be. This is a good time to be alive. Thanks for being with me. Just gliding across the dance floor of the mind. Gliding across the dance floor of the mind. So lucky to be with you, so lucky to be alive on this beautiful day in America, Savage Nation, day of a publication of yet another book, God, Faith, and Reason, my most important book. I've been writing it since I was born. And it's filled with stories about a kid this, a kid that. I don't want to bore you with the stories, but I will read you a few little pieces of a funeral and a this and a that, and you see where I'm coming from and where it goes. But during the break, as I was eating some bad Chinese food again, I can't get enough of the bad Chinese out here in the Bay Area. It's one of the things I love the most, which is bad Chinese food. I thought about something. I was thinking about, okay, I'm saying to you that God, right wing, freedom, individual liberty, self-will is on one side, and centralized government, power, control is on the other. The government controls everything you eat, breathe, think, crushes religion. That's the media. Think about it. Think about which side the media is on. Think about why they don't want the word God, faith, and reason on their networks. They may look like nice people, but why do they not want you thinking about God? Because they want you to think about nothing. They want to control what you think. They don't want you to think. They want to think for you. They want to pre-digest it for you. Okay, so I'm going to address something right now to people who listen to me in a way of life that you may not expect. I don't know who they are, but I know they listen. You think most of my audience are probably righteous people, decent people, and they probably are. But I would wager a bet that amongst the millions of people who listen to this show on a regular basis, there are many people in the dark underworld of this society, in the criminal world. And I'm going to appeal to you directly right now with my message. I want you to think about why there's almost no crime in communist nations like Cuba. The answer is because they are the criminals. They are the gang. The Castro brothers became the mafia of Cuba. They killed out all of the others. They threw Meyer Lansky out, for example, and stole his hotel because they became the criminals and the gangsters. Under Marxism and communism, there can be no criminal gangs. There can be no crime because the government becomes the ultimate criminal. They arrest anyone they want without due process. They torture anyone they want without repercussions. There's no reportage. Do you understand how crime is actually a part of a capitalist society? And it's actually a sign of a healthy capitalist society. I know it's odd for you to understand this, and you want to hear, well, I want to live in a world where there is no crime. You can't. That's like living in a world where there is no sin. There cannot be anything that is pure anything. The Marxists want to make a pure world where they run everything that is perfect, right? Has it ever been perfect in a communist world? Think of Cuba. Think of the criminal gang that runs Cuba. Think of the Soviet Union under Stalin. Think of the death camps, the labor camps. Think of the communism, the socialism rather, under Hitler. Never forget, Nazi stands for National Socialism. I pointed it out 15 years ago. The left does not like that inconvenient truth. They want to say, but he wasn't a real socialist. Oh, yes, he was. Hitler was a pure socialist, an absolute socialist, in cahoots with the big manufacturers of weaponry, like the Krupp family, the Krupp weapons manufacturers. I know all about this stuff. I've studied it since I'm 18 years old. And I'm telling you right now that the left in this country are the fascists of today. They're anti-God, they're godless. They're anti-faith, they're faithless. Accept faith in themselves and their deviancies, and faith in a big government. And they lack reason, because the minute you catch them in a logical flaw, they jump onto another argument. I've been doing this for 24 years. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Now, I want to now go and show you that there's literature in the midst of all of this. I don't know whether to read this. This is a little too risky. In this book, there are some fables toward the back. A lot of the stuff in the beginning you could understand. It has to do with faith and reason and God. But toward the back, I included things like Rabbi in a Brothel, a fable. And I don't know if it's too risque for me to read on the radio. There's nothing really pornographically off in it. But I don't know if I'm ready to read it on the air. I'll just read you the first paragraph. You'll get a taste for literature from Michael Savage. It's called, what's page 213, Rabbi in a Brothel, a Fable. Quote, either become a rabbi or open a brothel in Borneo, I told my wife. That's what my choices are. I had reached the ultimate cul-de-sac in my misbegotten existence. Staying on this road is decay, disease, and death. Straight ahead, I'd rather become a rabbi or open a brothel. Oh, I agree with you totally, she replied. Both would be closer to God than this. Well, what would you do if I did decide to take off to Borneo or a seminary? And the answer comes from the wife. And she answers it. And I tell you a little story. And I talk about a Chinese fortune teller who had predicted what was going to come. And then I talk about a fable about climbing Rain Mountain in Western Samoa and photographing myself lying adjacent to Robert Louis Stevenson's tomb, only my head jutting from the cement. And then I write, I'd kiss Paul Gauguin's grave in the Marquesas, drinking a $300 bottle of red Bordeaux, alone that night, listening to the long breaking surf rolling onto the reefless island, all the way from the nearest continent 5,000 miles distant. I'd had my testicles held in an assessing way by wild mountain warriors in New Guinea, who still behaved according to the original meaning of testament. You see, as you spoke, they held your testes, feeling the resonance or lack thereof, to judge your honesty. Did you know any of this? And in the Cook Islands, a break in the outlying reef in the middle of a storm meant just clearing the razor-like coral on a small wooden boat, getting stuck there after our 54-foot cutter had been sunk by an accidental blow from a passing sub. I remember sitting for weeks in that little atoll, pondering William Marston's grave. Marston was an English mariner who settled on Palmerston Island, had 4 wives and fathered 23 children, whose descendants now took care of me. Sweet inbreds, these violating the predictions of geneticists and royal watchers. I love that line. You know, that's a good line. I'm just saying, let me read it again. Had 4 wives and fathered 23 children, whose descendants now took care of me. Sweet inbreds, these violating the predictions of geneticists and royal watchers. Yeah, I'd been some adventurer and seen some adventure without thieving or killing. I'm an anomaly of the last years of the millennium, I know, but real. And I go on with that. You see what I'm saying? There's stories here and there's stories there. In the midst of it, I sprinkle the Bible. Thou shalt not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord, of Leviticus 19:18. Where do you think that came from, Wolf? Or I sprinkle in Proverbs 2:12-17, Wolf. Be he that breatheth forth truth uttereth righteousness, but a false witness deceit. Very simple language, but so powerful. A man's pride shall bring him low, but he that is of a lowly spirit shall attain an honor. Proverbs 29:23. See what I'm saying? I hope you do. There's a lot of things in here that you'll enjoy. So let me go on with Rabbi in a Brothel, a Fable, and read another piece of it. The rest you'll have to read on your own. So the character that I'm writing about winds up in a jungle, and he's somewhat mad, It's almost like going upriver in some of the novels that you have read in the past about going upriver and never coming back. See what I'm saying? You get it? The madness of a John Wilkes Booth, I write, whose self-realized cowardice became blamed on just one man, the one who had taken credit for freeing the slaves whom Booth had marked for death. And then I talk about the character I'm writing about. Should he stay, he might focus on the loudest of them now strutting about city chambers, and only God knew where that might lead. He was hurt by God, so he will become a priest, was a saying he grew up on. His younger brother, born a cripple, was supposed to become a holy man, but had died at age 7. So he, his older brother, had somehow felt obligated to fulfill his poor brother's calling. But how? With the impulses of a not-so-ordinary man and the personality of a born tyrant, our bridge traveler to nowhere had no intention of spending his life dressed in black. But could he not climb a tree so high and see so far as to bring back to earth for all to see God's vision for a perfect South? Could he not somehow fulfill his brother's lost lot in other than a formal priestly way? By rescuing healing plants, for example. Oh, how impossible this quest of the alternate priest became, to prove to God, if not to man, that you worshipped him, but in your own way, to do so without edifice or pageant, to sing his praises in silence, to bow down to him without moving, to follow his commandments without following them. Had our running priest become a Buddhist? The Messiah is here, proclaimed the flyers. The Messiah is here. Now it seemed the religious Jewish friends of the Lubavitcher sect had all gone mad. Souls that had once, years before, sheltered him, saved him from madness, from suicide or homicide, but now they, too, it seemed, needed saving. Collective insanity, he had thought when first he saw their announcements, to not only cry out for the coming in Jewish eyes, but to publish a date, and then, when the day had passed, drop all reference to the chosen one. Gender, God, and reality, heavy stuff to balance on a bridge. A horn warned the fog. A ship slipped the gate. Images of Bob and his generation looking forward to the shore crossed his mind. I'm on a bus going to Fort Cronkite. It comes to the end of the line, the driver says. Everybody off the bus. I sit still. Okay, off the bus. I ain't getting off, I tell him. It's too windy on the beach. Too windy, even for the old salt. For June in San Francisco, we're having August weather, but worse. The product of Saddam's oil fires last year. Vectors of wind out of control. The Muslim wins again, for in just 100 years, remember, our cunning Arab cousins took an unknown local cult of the book and swept 2/3 of the world. He gets out of his driver's seat. He comes to the back of the bus where I'm sitting next to 2 old ladies. Look, he says, you've got to get off the bus. I ain't going. He's got a half-shaved head, an earring, 3 rings on each finger, and he's a bus driver. One word leads to another. Listen, I'm going to smoke, and you've got to get off the bus. Well, I told him it's illegal. Get off the bus and smoke with the rest of the numbskulls. I'm not getting off in this wind. Wind, Hasim, screws everybody's mind. Ions, blows, pollen, mites, viroids into people's minds, sweeps protective cullens from the skin, upraises particles unseen, stripping people. Wind is death, according to the Japanese. Wind, the Russians think it brings illness, as do the Chinese. Not a race on earth welcomes it. Yet wind is the great pollinator, without which all screws itself. Wind, the world itself upsets. So Bob stays on the bus with the 2 old ladies, one asking the other, what did he say? Not comprehending the bus driver or seeing his earrings or shaved head or attitude, the hostile driver smokes a cigarette. But the fog was wafting strong now in the middle of the bridge. Bob sat firm in his triumph over one little vandal. It was his most recent battle against evil, one that had begun on the mean streets of East Oakland and led through Guadalcanal. I'll pause right there. It's a section from God, Faith, and Reason. It's a section entitled Rabbi in a Brothel. For those of you who think you know me, welcome again. Sooner or later, your car is going to break down. It's a fact every car, truck, and SUV owner knows, right? And if you're lucky, it'll happen while still under the manufacturer's warranty and the repairs are covered. But what if it happens after the warranty expires? Well, you could be out of pocket thousands to get it fixed. And that is why I recommend getting extended coverage from CarShield.com. A new engine, new transmission could cost you over $5,000. Even a simple repair to a sensor today could cost over $1,000. Skip that. CarShield makes the whole process easy. You select your favorite mechanic. You could even go to the dealership to do the work, and there's no checks in the mail, waiting for reimbursement. CarShield gets the mechanic paid directly. CarShield's administrators even give you the VIP treatment, providing 24/7 roadside assistance and the rental car while yours is in the shop so you're not left stranded in the cold. So listen to me. If your car is 3 to 12 years old, it doesn't mean you have to pay high repair bills. CarShield administrators have paid out close to $2 billion in claims. They're real and they're ready to help you. Save yourself thousands in potential car repairs. Get covered by the ultimate and extended vehicle service protection before it's too late. All you have to do is call 800-CAR-6100 and mention Savage, or visit carshield.com, code Savage, to save 10%. You heard me? carshield.com, code Savage. A deductible may apply. Of course, we are talking today about the kickoff day for God, Faith, and Reason. And many people are calling. I've just read you something that was maybe out of left field for most of you. You probably expected a preachy book, and in some places it probably is a preachy book. But in some places it's probably a freaky book. A freaky in the sense of literature. Literature scares people in some ways and reaches people in others. And hoping those of you who are cynical of me and of everyone else in the media to understand that no one is what you think they are. No man is who you typecast. Every man is much more than that. There are many more dimensions to most people than you may imagine, especially in my case, which explains how and why I've survived doing basically a one-man show for the last 24 years. It's because those who listen on a regular basis, who may not even call a show, never call a show, hear all of the multiplicity of elements within my voice and within my personality. It's that simple. I'm going to wait for you to buy the book and read it and call the show with what you've seen and what you've read that you want to talk about. And I've gotten some beautiful things so far, some great Amazon reviews. Jennifer Harper of the Washington Times wrote a great article. It's on michaelsavage.com. Great comments on Twitter. Amazon reviews are really good. Michael's journey is a joy to read. You'll find yourself relating in some fashion. Doc Savage doesn't just go with canned religion or what is popular. He asks questions as a good scientist would. He asks questions as a reasonable human being. Then comes the storytelling. He is a master storyteller. I always feel like I'm in the same room experiencing it. You will relate to his experience one way or another. Lawrence C. Tynes writes, keep searching, Michael. Dear Dr. S., you played a major role in my understanding of how the world works. I could always hear your gears working when it came to God. And he quotes a show. Bonnie Blue in South Carolina says, spiritually intellectual in a way only Savage can write. A very open and honest dialect about how God comes in and out of our lives. In particular, Dr. S. is a thought-provoking book that allows the reader to utilize reasoning beyond what we are taught and to think about our true purpose. As always, a very intellectual insight going back to our personal founding. Everyone has a mother, father, grandmother who had religion, and at some point, maybe our most venerable, we will try to find it. So why not now? And I want to remind those of you who are devoid of faith, who sneer at faith, you're probably only 2 generations away from a very, very devout church or synagogue attendee. It's in your genes. It's in your DNA. Don't deny it, because you'll cry it. Savage Nation. Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker. If I could write the way he plays that saxophone, I'd be Michael Savage. Welcome to the welcome to the program. Can I entertain myself, folks? Am I not allowed to have a good time every once in a while? It's been a long, long, rocky road to get here, and no one knows how long where the road goes. And I don't want to get like maudlin and all of that, but truthfully, I feel that this book is it. I feel that this was why I was put here. And I've read you some of the jazz writing in it. If I call it that, maybe you'll get turned off or turned on. I don't know who you are and where you are. I know the left will never read my book because they believe that anyone who doesn't conform to their statism is not worthy of humanity. Of course, I would respectfully disagree with them. And this is not a political book, nor is it a preachy book. It is a personal book. It's an odyssey. There's a link on the Drudge Report. It's still there. It's amazing to me. Savage Finds God, talk host on Spiritual Odyssey. How long has it been since you have read the word Odyssey? Have you seen the word Odyssey? Have you seen the word Iliad? Maybe you read them in high school, as I did. Maybe they're not taught anymore because they were just dead white males. They weren't as smart as rap stars who rub their crotches and have jewelry in their teeth. But you know, the Odyssey and the Iliad are still very important books to most of the world. not to the spiritually declining nation of ours. Nevertheless, here I am. There you are. The phone number is 855-407-282. Michael Savage leaps into faith with new book. Oh, God, a pop-up. I can't even finish this. Continue without supporting. Michael Savage leaps into faith with new book, offering one man's glimpses of God. This is a great article by my good friend Jennifer Harper at the Washington Times. And I'll read you a paragraph. Talk Radio Kingpin, I like that. Michael Savage is the first to point out that his newest book is not standard religious writing, though it bears the title God, Faith, and Reason, and follows his 25 other books, which dwelled on politics, culture wars, national security, immigration issues, and science. His last book, in fact, was Trump's Wars, Battle for America, and it made the New York Times bestseller list as #1, despite being ignored by the mainstream media. Savage is very candid about his motives as an author this time around. I wrote this odyssey over nearly a lifetime of searching and to thank the Creator for my life, Savage tells Inside the Beltway. This is very important for you to know. When I was down and out, I had to go down to the core of my being and reach out to the man upstairs, to put it colloquially. And I had to ask him to save me. It didn't happen like a boom went off or lightning struck or Charlton Heston appeared in my living room with a ticket to heaven. I had to keep asking for it. It took me 20 years to climb out of that hole. You see, God helps those who help themselves. He doesn't give you anything. By reaching out to God, maybe you can help yourselves, the author writes. The book, published today, Tuesday, is engaging, detailed, and spirited work, both conversational and soul-searching, restless and reassuring all at once. Savage shares an old prayer which has helped him. He recalls childhood moments, dinner with an atheist, and brews the lesser role of faith in America. He also asks the big, persistent question about questions about belief, reason, and humanity. She concludes with this. She quotes me. I never saw God, nor do I pretend to have any special insights. What you will see in this book are snapshots of God, not a complete film. This book is presented in an omnibus style and does not have to be read in precise sequential order. What you will see is one man's glimpses of God, images along the road of life, Savage says. I do not represent myself as a theologian or a guru. There are no cheap thrills here for the spiritually bankrupt masses. It is my scrapbook of the highest power through dreams, memories, and stories, much like the ancient text, close quote. She did a great job. She caught the essence of it. And now what do you want me to do for you? You want me to read from the book, take the calls? What would you like me to do? It's your show. Huh? Let's take a call. Nancy on WABC Line 2. How are you this Tuesday, the day of the launch? What's on your mind?
So I just wanted to tell you that, and I don't know what kind of calls you're taking right now. I'm a school teacher. I work with children with autism spectrum disorder, and my father is a very right-wing conservative. I grew up in that kind of house. My father was born and bred Brooklyn, Italian. And I was always kind of on the fence, didn't really know where to go. I was pretty much left because that's what I thought as a school teacher I had to do. As a independent woman, that's what I had to do. And I just started listening to your show I would say about 5 or 6 months ago. And I got to tell you, you have completely opened my eyes to how I look at the world, what stations I listen to. I've stopped watching CNN. I've gone to the Drudge Report. I'm really looking forward to reading your new book. And I just wanted
what is it about me? What is it, my voice, my personality, my genius, what is it you like, the craziness? What do you like most?
Everything. I mean, I could certainly listen to you read the dictionary.
All right, so no, there's a lot of truth in the fact that God gave me a powerful, sonorous voice for a reason.
Oh,
the reason is what I'm doing on the radio. That's it. That's my calling.
100%. And
thank you. Look, I almost said thank you, sweetheart, but I guess I could get sued for that today.
Okay.
Is that considered sexual assault to say thank you, sweetheart? I don't even know.
No, fine with me.
No, what do you say? Thank you, sweetheart. You know, I was at KSMO Studios yesterday, broadcasting from San Francisco. So a very nice woman came over. She's in sales, and she wanted to just give me a hug. And I said, no. All I can do is shake your hand. I mean, that's the world we're living in right now. You understand how crazy it is, Nancy?
Yeah, and it's a damn shame. And I'm raising a daughter right now. She's 7 years old. And you asked what is great about you that's completely opened my eyes. And you've said so many things that have stuck with me. And one of the things that you've said is, I don't know who taught it to you when you were growing up, but I think it was one of your mentors that you said, but the only thing that you can wake up in the morning and bring to your radio show is your dignity. And
That's right.
really,
I'm sure your father felt the same way.
yes, sir. I call him every day. I said, Dad, did you listen to Savage? And it's funny because my dad and I, he's 72 years old, and we talk about you almost every day. And I call him. I said, did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? And my daughter.
So I'm sort of like the bridge between generations. That's beautiful. And I'm sure you're not alone, Nancy. I know this. I hear this all the time. I'm an important connector for many people in this country who don't seem to have connections anymore. And that is a blessing. I got to tell you, maybe that is my work. Thank you for calling. I'm sending you a nice copy for Christmas of God, Faith, and Reason. You know, I meant to do this for the last hour. I forgot. You know, did you ever have so many things going on in your head at one time and you don't write them all down? Because I can't write them all down. I have to think on my feet. I was going to sleep last night after a very long day before the book was launched and that great show I did. And I thought about it. I looked at a picture of my brother, which I keep on a mantle. I look at him every night and say goodnight to him every night. I know it sounds crazy. I do. I say goodnight, Jerome. Hope you know, whatever. My own little thing. And I thought, is there no way I can take all the profit from this book and give it to a reliable, not thieving group that cares for these children somewhere in the world? I don't know if there is such a thing. Here's the problem I have found. I give money to animal organizations, and some of it is garbage. They steal it. All they do is travel and go to dinners. It's a shame. I've given a fortune away to guerrilla groups, and a lot of these guys are total crooks. The gorillas are still being killed. I give money to elephant-saving groups, and the Ganefs in the middle between. They're saving an elephant. The only people saving elephants are the ex-Navy SEALs who were killing the poachers. So I'm talking about so severely developmentally disabled children who I don't want to wind up in a snake pit like my brother did, like Willowbrook. And, you know, I don't know where that is. We live in a society that offers so much free medical care. We live in a society of socialized medicine. Let's be very clear. Socialized medicine is what we already have. Don't fool yourself. Anyone can get any amount of treatment they want in this country. It's a lie if you think otherwise. You name a country that gives people more than this. Every quirk, every this. I watch these shows at night of emergency rooms. Stupid stumble bum crackhead falls out of the window there in some slum from 10 feet up. A waste of human DNA falls down. They have to give him the same care as they would, let's say, the president of the United States. Or if you don't like the president, then say, pick the most favorite person you have. What kind of country is this? Do you actually think that we should devote hundreds of thousands of dollars for a crackhead who falls 10 feet and falls to the ground? You actually think that they should be treating all of these gunshot wounds in all of these emergency rooms when the gangbangers are shooting each other because they have no respect for themselves or life? Do you actually think a society can survive that devotes as much attention to those people as they do to the worthy people? Yes, and I will judge who is worthy. And yes, I will say there are productive people and there are non-productive people. And I will say that we're not all equal. I will tell you that right now. By lifestyle choices or whatever, some people are just not worth the time and the money. And, you know, if you say I'm Ayn Rand, well, welcome to the club. So now, having said that, what do I do about the developmentally disabled kids who may not be getting those electrical wheelchairs, who may not be getting the care that they need that can push them a little further along the road where they can become fully human again, or close to fully operational in the brain at least, so that they don't have to suffer in a snake pit the way my brother Jerome did. And I asked myself, where is that place? And if you're listening to this show, keep a line open, Jim. If you're listening to this show and you know where there is such a place or such a hospital or such a charity that does not already receive all the money they don't know what to do with, you let me know. And I'll make sure that all the profits from my book, God, Faith, and Reason, go to that hospital. How's that? Because I can't find it. I've already blown through another stop set because it's just the way it is. I want to talk with you so much about so many things all at once. And so I invite you to call at 855-400-7282. Loads of calls. Good day. Thank you. Be back in a minute. All right. Welcome back to the program. I'm going to do something here that I want to do for the people who didn't catch it yesterday. This book is about a lot of different things. It's a lot about the show, a lot about me, who I am. And if you like me, you got to know where I come from, all of that stuff. A big part of it is my silent brother. And some friends of mine, really great people, are doing a documentary. They started it. And there's a little 2-minute piece from this documentary entitled My Silent Brother. I don't know, Robert, if you have it ready. I didn't even ask for it today. And we didn't play it in hour number 2. A lot of people didn't catch it. A lot of people did catch it. I want you to listen to this and tell me what you think of it. Please play it, Robert. He was 2.5 years younger than me. No one knew he was brain damaged when he was born because he was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, beautiful little child. For the first year and a half, they figured he's just a kid, right? And then suddenly they realized he couldn't hear and he couldn't see. Once they realized there was something, quote, wrong with him, he would be sat in the kitchen alone in his high chair. No one was allowed to talk to him. When no one was around, I'd go up and start to talk to him, and I remember whistling to him. And I'd see his eyes light up. So I knew he was alive. That's the heartbreaker because they said there's nothing there. But there was something there, like him. The doctor said you have to get rid of the sick child for the sake of the healthy children. So they sent him to this snake pit. I think it was covered in the news later on.
The doctor had warned me that it would be bad. It was horrible.
I'm talking snake pit level. I never saw him again. My mother, she'd go visit him every week for the rest of his life. She'd come back white, completely emotionally wrecked. I was alone in the apartment with a sad mother. No one knew it but me because she didn't show this to the world. What did I do? I entertained her. I'd make crazy faces for Mommy. I would do craziest shit you could ever think of. Stand on my head, whistle, stick my fingers in my ears, in my nose to make my mother laugh. Again, what did I learned how to entertain.
This young lady needs something. Oh, look at this. Oh, the ravioli. Pasta. We got the pasta coming. With my nervous system, you ever think I'd hit 75? Here's Dick the Fisherman. And Nick caught the calamari you're eating when he specialized in Sicilian fishing trips. One way.
Okay, that's a piece of me. Well, go on. I didn't know there was more. An entertainer. That was a piece of a party I had for my birthday not too long ago, where Nick the Fisherman was there. I love Nick. Nick has a boat he's happy with and catches the calamari out of Monterey. And it doesn't get shipped to China and frozen and come back to us. It comes right from Monterey up to North Beach, and I know where to get the good stuff. Anyway, that was that. So we go from the maudlin, the sad, to the happy, and that's life, right? By the way, that was the voice of Geraldo Rivera, and I want to thank him for his early work. I don't know Geraldo. He broke the story of that snake pit, Willowbrook. That was his voice in that old documentary. And soon thereafter, that snake pit was closed down, by the way. And so my life at that time as a boy in the Bronx was like a Satyajit Ray film. If you're in the film world, you know what I'm talking about, Satyajit Ray. Teeming people in the streets of Calcutta. That's what it was like. And here I sit alone in the days that follow in a suburb. It reminds me very much of Henry Miller in a way. I remember seeing a documentary of Henry Miller later in his life when he was in his house in the Pacific Palisades. And I loved Henry Miller, every book he ever wrote, especially Black Spring. And there he was bobbing around on the edge of his pool in Pacific Palisades. Henry Miller, of all people, the Parisian poet, the Parisian writer. There he is bobbing around in his later years, holding on the edge of his pool, talking to a documentary filmmaker about his life back when he was young, then in Paris, and this and that. And I'm saying, my God, what a story this is. And his voice was so real in the way he told matter-of-factly in his deep, manly voice his life. In many ways, what I hear in my own voice is that. And I guess that's all it is. That's all it is. Like a Satyajit Ray film my entire life. At least it was in the beginning when it was rich and textured. And now it's simply a man alone on a hill looking at a hawk. Buddy Rich. I know this tune. One of the great drum solos in the history of music. I don't know what Buddy was on. Probably Locks. Unbelievable. Thanks, Buddy. I know his daughter used to call the show every time I played it. She'd say, Buddy Rich was my dad. She called me out of Las Vegas. I love that call. Yeah, it is sort of like that. So this thing with Senator Rand Paul getting knocked down by that nut doctor. Guy looks like a bug job. Not Rand Paul. I mean, the neighbor's a bug job. You see, runs at him, throws him to the ground, breaks the ribs. There's got to be more to it than the boundary thing with the trees. Unruly behavior. I don't know. Then you look at the guy, the ex-anesthesiologist. First of all, most anesthesiologists tap into the meds. That's a well-known fact. I'm not saying he does, but it's well known in the field that anesthesiologists like to use the stuff that they use. So I don't know. Maybe that's it. Who knows? But to break all those ribs with a tackle? I'm thinking of that bum who knocked me to the ground. How did I not break anything? Luck. Somebody up there maybe just put his hand out and stopped the fall. Teddy shook like a leaf afterwards. But I was thinking about something I wanted to tell you about, and I'm going to then get to your calls. I swear I'll get to the book and the calls in a minute. I haven't gotten to Henry's funeral or stuff like that, all in God, faith, and reason, which I know people are going to enjoy, those who actually read it, instead of saying, oh, I don't read him. I don't read Savage. Well, why don't you read Savage and see if you think I am who you think I am, because I'm not who you think I am. In some ways, I'm far more to the right than you could ever imagine. You see, if God were alive, he wouldn't be just a conservative. God wouldn't be part of the Republican Party, I can guarantee you. God would have formed his own party of God. And he'd have a lot of sons and daughters of God on his side. And believe me, man, God is really conservative. All you're going to do is look at the 10 Commandments to know what I'm saying. Not one of those 10 Commandments are followed by the left. Some of them are followed by the right. That's all I can say. So God, if he were alive, man, would he be on the right? Don't ever believe the liars who say God would be a communist. That's one of their tricks. That's how the devil lies to you. It's sort of like be a gentleman, young man, or don't be judgmental, young man. That's part of the devil's work. That's a way to control you. So what was I going to say to you? I was going to say a lot to you. It's a very personal story, this story here that I'm telling you. It's not just about a book. It's about my whole life. You say, well, what do I care about your life? Well, I'm telling you my life. That's what this book's about. My search to find the meaning of it all. What does it all mean? You think there's a man alive who hasn't thought about it? Woman, man, you man who hasn't thought about it? About the hereafter, if there is one, no thereafter, foreafter, hereafter, thereafter, my after, your after, all aboard? No one knows. What do you think music, poetry, science, and art is all about? It's the search. And as I say to you, the search is the success, my friends. That's all I can tell you. That's something I discovered along the way. Also, I discovered this, and I'll say it to you again. This is my E equals MC squared moment. This is my Einsteinian moment. As I was finishing this book, I came up with this idea, and I think it's a great idea. It's an original idea. I never read it anywhere. Maybe it's in someone's treatise somewhere. I never saw it. You know, those things happen. I said, why can't I see God? Why can't I touch God? Why can't I see and touch God? Well, it's very interesting. What was on the earth and what still is on the earth and what is being imported into this great land of ours other than paganism and idol worship? It's idol worship. Do you understand what Christianity meant? Do you understand what Judaism meant when it said, thou shalt not bow down to false idols? Do you understand what the power of that message is? Because there were idol worshipers in the ancient days. So God comes down and speaks and says, don't worship that pebble. Don't worship that rock. Don't worship that feather. Don't worship that cloud. Don't worship that sun. There is only one true God, and that establishes Judaism, which leads to Jesus Christ and Christianity, which leads to Islam. They're all called monotheistic religions. In essence, at their best, one God, same God, at best. Okay? Now, what does it have to do with what I'm saying to you? You figure it out. You figure out what I'm trying to say to you. So I'm saying, well, where is this God? We're not allowed to touch the Buddha statue because we're not Buddhists. We're not allowed to worship a stone because we're not pagans. Well, where's God? Where is this God of ours? And all my life I've been looking for him. I mean, I'm not Jimmy, whatever that president was. That one, Jimmy Carter, who claims I came in the house and drank strychnine with him. I don't know. They shake snakes in their church down there. I don't know what they do. Hallelujah and all that. I'm not. I don't see him. He never visited me in a living room. We never had a drink together. I don't know where he was. And then one day it dawned on me. Our God, the God of our fathers, the God of Jews, the God of Christians, is an invisible God for one reason. He doesn't want you to see him. He wants you to seek him. Because if you seek him and regularly seek him, whether it's through prayer or whatever you're using, you will find him. Some find it through prayer. You see, this is the problem with modern prayer. I actually want to get into that for a minute. If you go into most churches today, it's so sad. It's just sad singing like, we're poor little lambs who have gone astray, blah, 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 blah. And you feel, I don't want to be a lamb. If you're a bold human being, you don't want to feel like a defeated lamb. Poor little lamb who's gone astray, blah, 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 blah. You don't want to feel that, that ritual singing that has no power, no energy. So even when I was young, I think I read about this in the book, I was attracted to black churches in New York. I remember to this day, I went up to Harlem to some Abyssinian church. I don't know what it was. I met this guy, Preacher Billy, in the streets. I did. I drove him up in my old broken little green Volkswagen. Took me to some church up in Harlem. It was an all-black congregation. They loved Brother Billy. Well, that church rocked. I got to tell you, that thing moved. That's what I'm talking about. That's different. So I've always been drawn to passionate religious people. You know what I'm saying? I don't mean those who hurt or kill. I'm talking about those who are passionate and they're reaching for God. And so therefore, what I am saying to you is God wants us to keep searching for him and seeking him out. And we want in our searching, we find him. That's the E equals MC squared. That's the theory of savage relativity. That's what God wants. He doesn't want us to see him. And here's why. Here's the real why. If you actually could see God and touch God, literally so, you dismiss him like yesterday's HBO movie, like yesterday's Netflix production, like yesterday's theater production. You'd say, I've seen it. It's okay. Not a big deal. Now what's next? So by remaining invisible, God remains eternal. And that's my story of the day. Now, if you're a Hasidic Jew listening to me, you should have a vodka right now because you just had a Farbrengen. That's the rabbinical thing that you should get from this book. It's a shame the Jews won't buy the book, especially religious Jews. The Christians are lining up for it. This is the one thing I'll never understand. There's a guy in radio. I think he's a Mormon. I don't know. The guy's a nice enough guy. He wrote a book, but it sold a few million copies. Why? Because all the Mormons bought the book. Unfortunately, my people don't buy my book. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. They don't support me. They're much like the news. But I'm not complaining. I'm just talking. Because I write and I talk. That's who I am. And as I talk and as I write, I am. And as I am, I am. Okay? Now, what do you want me to do? WJRW in Detroit, line 2. Go ahead, please. You're on the Savage Nation.
Dr. Savage, your quest is every man's quest. I mean, you also mentioned, the Abyssinian Church in New York. Matter of fact, Bonhoeffer wrote about that church. He said it's fascinating. And if you know about Bonhoeffer, the German theologian, he spent many a day in New York City at the Abyssinian Church because of its fervor, its spirit.
The floorboards moved. Yeah.
Because the thing is your quest for God is every man's quest, and what I've been thinking about is I want to ask you what's next after radio, but that's not a question you can really answer. But I will say this, Dr. Savage, there's a scripture that says, "With faith without works is dead." I think you without works would be dead. You need radio. You need energy.
You better not let those who manage the company hear that, because they'll knock me down on the next negotiation.
Dr. Savage, we love you in Michigan, and I miss you being live as I would have.
Yeah, that was a genius move on the part of the program director. Very smart.
It hurt my heart, but I continue.
Let me say to all of my listeners in Detroit or elsewhere and the other markets that I got moved around and are dismissed, just hang in there a little while, because in the next 6 months you're going to see a revolution going on, and you just might be surprised where old Mike winds up.
Appreciate that, Dr. Savage. I'm on my way to Barnes & Noble to pick up my copy.
Well, I'm going to send you an extra one to give away to a non-believer, and you're a great man. I really do appreciate your voice. My friend, that's a nice call. What did I want to say? There was something else on my mind before the break. I got to say something else. I was going to get to something else. I did the Rabbi in a Brothel piece, which was like, what is that? I didn't read Henry's funeral. Did I do Henry's funeral yet? No. So I should do Henry's funeral, not right now, because it's a very beautiful part of the book. And, Ryan, could you come in here and turn the lights on so I can actually see the book? My poor assistant, he's been working so hard these days with this book. Let There Be Light. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Let There Be Light. And so, therefore, I think I got a minute or two to do this. And I just got to find it. You know, it's like, okay, can't put my hands on it. Where is it? Got the yellow tab, got the poultice, I don't know where it is. Jerome's story is in there. Okay, that's in there, the Sajat Ray Brothers story. The Room with a View to Eternity. It's in there. It's toward the back of the book. Here it is. Okay, so it's about an earlier part of me, an earlier self, page 229. I had a friend named Bob who had a little bit of a Nazi sentiment to him. And we'd argue all the time. I liked Bob. He liked me. World War II vet. Tall, lean, angular guy. Street fighter. Not educated, but he read incessantly. Butterfly collector. Very sensitive, intelligent man. He probably substituted Louis from Louis the Monkey in my life in some way. You know how we repeat in some ways. Anyway, I knew this guy, and I liked him. He liked me. We cooked sausages up in his room once in a while, drank some beer. So as time goes on, I have a friend who had a father named Murray who had survived Auschwitz. And Murray had 3 fingers of his hand cut off by a Nazi in Auschwitz. Just for fun, they put his hand through a little saw, cut 3 fingers off. But it didn't kill him. He came out, came to America, built a life for himself. He met Florence, and he had a life, built a family, and he had a son named Joel who became my friend. And this guy Murray was full of life. Big drinker, loved women, beat his son with a strap. Big personality, and I told Bob about it, the Nazi, and Bob liked that. I think the anti-Semite in him liked the never cried and beat his son parts of Murray, so I proceeded to tell him my funeral story. When I come back, I'll finish that right here in the Savage Nation. Look, life is stressful, even worse when the IRS is after you for back taxes. You'll agonize when they show up, believe me, seize your bank account, put a lien on your home, garnish your wages. It was even worse for Lori. Lori, you see, was engaged, but she knew bringing $25,000 of IRS debt into the marriage was no way to start a new life. Lori did something smart. She called Optima Tax Relief. Optima stepped between Lori and the IRS, analyzed her case, and uncovered some game-changing facts that allowed them to settle a case in her favor. When Optima told Lori that her IRS problems are over, she called it the happiest call of her life, and her wedding was back on. Optima has resolved over $500 million in tax debt. They're the real McCoy. And let me tell you something, they're A-plus rated with the Better Business Bureau. Getting your life back starts the moment you call Optima for your free consultation. 800-731-2474. It's that simple, 800-731-2474. 800-731-2474. Before the hour is out, now I'm back to, I got to finish the story of the funeral. So, Bob shut his mouth that night many years ago, and as I've said, he tends to harbor certain Nazi sentiments. So when I told him about Murray's mutilated hand, I wasn't surprised at his lack of immediate pitying sounds. Murray never cried about his hand, I told Bob. He came to America with Florence, who he met somewhere over there, and had a family, namely Joel. He was full of life, this Murray. He was a big drinker. He loved women. He beat his son with a strap, but he was a big personality. Bob nodded. I think the anti-Semite in him liked the never cried and beat his son parts of Murray. So I proceeded with my funeral story. I'm reading from God, Faith, and Reason. I had lost touch with Joel for a few years. His wife threw him out for beating her and at least one of their daughters, and he was in one of his episodic hidings, this time from the sheriff's department. They were after him for his house and all his earnings to give to his greedy wife. Somehow I heard his father, Murray, had cancer and was dying. I called his mother and went over a few days later. We brought over a bag of groceries, French bread, a pound of sliced turkey, some wine, some vegetables, and a quart of milk. The usual stuff you bring when someone's sick, poor, and housebound. Florence and Joel greet us at the door of their little one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. I always liked it there, remembering inviting us over, reminded me of my child. And like my deceased father, the place was filled with oversized, high-quality furniture and paintings because Murray was an antiques dealer. So there he was in a bathrobe and a gigantic English armchair that didn't fit the apartment, all shrunken up but beautiful in a way. He pulled me close and said, Michael, I remember when you took me and Joel over to Berkeley almost 20 years ago. I know you almost 20 years. That's not a short time. You took me to a bar afterwards on Telegraph Avenue. Those were the good times. Now are the bad times. Bob, I prodded. You hear this? I extend one good deed 20 years ago, and this guy remembers. It's like one of the best moments of his life, this one good drink. So he goes fast into the hospital where he insists they let him out, probably to die at home. And 3 or 4 days later, boom, it's over. Like that? Joel told me he had been sick most of the night, vomiting, probably those toxic chemochemicals. He forced himself up and says, Joel, she's there on your left, the angel of death. Joel gets scared. He says, Pop, there's nobody here but me and Mom. Murray stares at the big chair across the small room. To your right, Joel, on the couch. He's here with her. He stands up, starts to walk across the room, and collapses. I can see that even the anti-Semite Bob is tearing up, wiping the tears from his face. Listen, you racist bastard, I said to him, looking at that hole in the ground with Murray's casket so bare and hearing the rabbi's ancient chant and watching the young Mexican gravediggers moved by that chant, I became reminded of my own whole waiting. I never knew where I wanted to live, I whispered to Joel's friend from Israeli intelligence, and I sure don't know where I want to die. We never know where we're going to die, he reminded me with a 70s rocker's cackle and grin. For decades. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. You know, sometimes jacket copy for a book is not too good. Sometimes it's really good. I'm going to read you a paragraph. But rather than an academic theological treatise, Savage provides something more akin to an ancient mystery text. Drawing on Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, and other spiritual sources, as well as autobiographical material and highlights from his radio show, Savage shares a series of glimpses of God he has experienced over the whole of his life, before and after his groundbreaking radio career. Moving childhood stories, his dinner with an atheist and a Buddhist, an interview with a Jewish gangster, and Savage's reflections on selected passages from ancient scriptures are just a few of the eclectic group of experiences and insights Savage shares in this unique book. From his days as a boy growing up in New York City to many years searching for healing plants in the South Seas, to his current incarnation as one of the most popular talk radio hosts in the world, Savage has been haunted by glimpses of the divine and struggled to find their meaning. God, faith, and reason. Pretty good. So during the break, my publisher, I really have to thank her. I haven't, I erased it. My publisher, Kate Hartson of Center Street, if you're still listening, I want to thank you very much for having the faith to publish me. I got to tell you that. This was not an easy book to understand. And it's not as easy to understand, for example, as my last 4 bestsellers, Trump's War, Government Zero. You know all my books, right? Those are easy to understand, even though they were risky in some ways. I don't think too many publishers would have touched them. And so she did. And there it is, and here we are. Should I read you on the chapter, Buddhism, the Religion of Submission? Nah, I'm not a Buddhist, but I have it in there. It's one paragraph. It's actually one page, Buddhism, the Religion of Submission. Maybe I should. I remember a caller on the Savage Nation who had a wonderful insight into this. And I write this: what ties together everything in the Jewish scriptures is the responsibility for man to actively seek God and do his will. That's where I believe the Judeo-Christian tradition is superior to Buddhism. Whereas Jews and Christians are called by their scriptures and belief systems to actively change their own lives and try to make the world a better place, Buddhism is very much a religion of submission and accepting the world as it is. Have you read that anywhere? Did you get that from the Berkeley Theological Seminary? I haven't seen that anywhere. Did Martin Buber write it? No, Michael Savage wrote it. I remember a caller on the Savage Nation who had a wonderful insight into this. He said, well, I respect the Buddhist perspective. I understand the desire to remove oneself from the karmic wheel. But it has always struck me in a sense as being a dichotomy in that the other side of that coin is an avoidance of the human experience. You have no attachment. You seek no goals. In essence, you seek to become an empty cup, he said. I couldn't have agreed more with that caller. When I was much younger and doing a lot of reading on the subject, I concluded myself that all religions are somewhat specific to the nation and the people and the place and time in which they were established. Buddhism was a religion that was very good for people who were serfs and had no chance to advance themselves. No matter what they did, no matter how they did it, they could never move ahead. So they naturally embraced a religion that teaches that it's the norm to get nowhere, that no matter what you do, you're going to struggle and fail. That was their situation under the socio-political system they lived under, and they developed a religion that would allow them to cope with or make sense of their lot in life under that system. So Buddhism was ultimately a religion for submission to the inevitable of getting nowhere in life. It's like all religions that appeal to people who are broken and suffering in this life, because they promise eternal life in another place. That's fine and good to believe in. It can be very healthy and keep you going and make you a noble person. That's it. And that's an entire chapter. I'm giving you an example. Some of the stories are long, some are short. Some of this, some of that. No Man is an Island. You're not going to believe what you have here. You have like 10 books in one. It's not a book. It's an odyssey. It's a search, God, faith, and reason. And I don't think I'm going to read any more from it right now. Maybe we'll do some other stuff. Can I have a little jazz, Robert? Just a little more of that great stuff who I love. You know the stuff I love. I don't want to talk about Lost, Lonesome Boy in a Cold Sand, or the New Murano Jews. I don't want to talk about Lotus from the Muck, or Passion's Power. I don't even want to talk about meaning. I want to talk about nothing. I want to take a vow of silence. I'm ready to go into the forest phase of my life. I think the Buddhists believe in that. You reach a certain point, you like withdraw. That's never going to be me. America can withdraw? Who withdraws? All right, welcome back. Here we are. What do you want to talk about? Did anyone buy this book yet? Did anyone go to a bookstore? What's going on in the bookstores? Where's it hidden? It should be like up front in the up front cell, Shouldn't be buried under like, coffee table books. Is it front and center in the stores, which the publisher paid for? Was it buried? Who do you think needs to read this book? Are you buying one for your green-haired daughter? Are you buying one for your son who became a dog in a trans-species transformation? Who says he feels like a dog, so therefore he is a dog? And you slap him. You see, in the old days, if a kid did a thing like that, and he said, Dad, I feel like a lizard, so I think I'm going to be a lizard. I'm a trans-species individual. The father would have shook him and said, not in my house, you're not going to be a lizard. And he would have shook him around, maybe give him a good crack over the head with something, and that would have been the end of the lizard experience. But today, oh, yes, son, whatever you feel like being. You feel like being a lizard? That's fine. Come crawl over to the dinner table, will you please? And we'll put some of the food on the floor. We wouldn't expect you to sit at a table and eat out of a plate because you're now a half lizard. This is what I'm talking about. This is where it goes. This is where it goes. That's how it is. KSFO, Betsy, line 5. Welcome to the program.
Michael, I was walking into Costco during your first hour. Here on the East Coast, it's 3 p.m. I squealed when I saw your books. I had your book in my hand, went out to the car, and you were starting to read Rabbi in a Brothel. I sat there and I followed along with you, but here's what I want to say. I found myself sobbing, but not because of the tale. I want to tell your audience that what you have done is you have instilled in the words of this book the essence of Dr. Michael Savage. So in a visceral way, I can feel you. Now, naturally, I've been listening to you for over a decade, and I feel like I know you, but this is your most prolific writing ever, and I have every one of your books.
I can't, there's nothing you can say to a call like that other than thank you, Betsy. Thanks for hearing me. I guess you heard in my voice what you couldn't read in the words is what you're saying.
I cannot wait.
Right? You heard in my voice what you couldn't read in the words. In other words, a book is static compared to a voice, which is the magic of radio. I got to tell you, Betsy, talk radio is the greatest medium of storytelling ever invented, incidentally. It actually supersedes that of the written word. I'm going to send you another copy for someone in your family. I mean, that's a whole thing to talk about, which is how talk radio, if you're blessed with a voice for it and you don't sound like Frito in the Godfather, it's a great medium to tell stories. And if you can't tell stories, you don't. You play a one-string banjo every day, and you call yourself John Coltrane. What do you want me to talk about right now? Le Petit Mort? We can do that if you'd like. Does anyone even know what Le Petit Mort means anymore in this age of sexual inappropriateness? Whatever happened to Le Petit Mort? Maybe that would be the title of a good book. Le Petit Mort and other stories. I'm in a giddy mood. I've been up since 5 in the morning, and I have so much energy, I don't know what to do with it. You know, I did a show, 7:30 in the morning. I called KSFO, and I asked them if I could be on the show. So I said, sure, come on the show. So I did KSFO morning show with Brian Sussman and Katie Green. That was in the morning. Then 10 o'clock, I was supposed to be on the Alex Jones show for 15 minutes. It lasted an hour because Alex Jones and I, we feed each other. We started doing that. Now this show from 12 o'clock till now, it's almost 3 hours. I don't know what I'm going to do after this show. I don't work enough. That's my problem. People say, how do you do this? How do you do all this? I don't do enough. I don't do enough. I mean, the thing is there's too many hours in a day for me. I need a show after the show. I'd like to take a nap, take a shower, and do another show. And I may be doing that in the coming months. I have endless energy. I remember when I was a little kid. Here we go again. But when I was a little kid, I was always up early. I didn't know what to do with myself. So they bought me an electric train set with three, not a Lionel, it was the other one, the American Flyer that had three rails. I never liked it as much because it wasn't authentic. And I used to lie, like a kid, I used to like to lie on the rug and run that train around the living room floor. It was a little apartment. And it blew smoke. You put little tablets in the chimney of the train, and it blew smoke, and it whistled. Ooh, and I'd lay on the floor with my eyes next to it, and I'd watch the train coming at my head. I was always into trying to turn things into what they weren't, as I've done with people my whole life. I turned fake trains into real trains, and real trains into fake trains, and freight trains into passenger trains, and passenger trains into airplanes. But nevertheless, I got so bored one day that I put my hand on the middle rail and got a little electrical shock. Another day, I remember seeing what an electric socket felt like because I didn't understand how electricity worked. So little by little, I'm telling you, I put my finger into the socket with a wire. I mean, it's crazy stuff that kids do. You really have to watch kids every second. If you're raising a child, be overprotective in a certain way. Trust me, or else they'll wind up as a half lizard, half child. This is the Savage Nation I'm talking about in my book, God, Faith, and Reason. Be with me. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Time is short. I was on my website, michaelsavage.com. Listen to this article, will you? France debates dropping minimum legal age for sexual consent to 13. The minute I read that, I thought, gee, Roy Moore ought to start his life all over again and move to France, but I didn't think that was too good a joke. But, I mean, that's an article. It's crazy. 13 now. Now 13. And in Sweden, ISIS is hijacking radio shows with ISIS propaganda on Swedish shows, and they declared milk to be a racist hate symbol of white supremacy. That's how sick Sweden has become. A land of the Vikings become a land of the half-humans. I never saw anything like this. Tony on KSFO, line 8. What's on your mind, Tony?
Hey, I got your book this morning on my Kindle, 4 in the morning on the East Coast, and caught a plane back to California and read the whole book on the flight home, and just truly amazed at what you put out there. It's really inspiring to me.
I was going to ask you if you had the book with the cover on the plane, what kind of looks and comments you attracted, but since you read it on Kindle, I guess they didn't even know what you were reading.
So, yeah, I've been fighting 2 types of cancer for the last couple of years. And,
oh my God, I have something.
Leukemia.
I had a dream about cancer last night. I can't find it. I can't believe it. I forgot it. I had a dream in the middle of the night that I was in a seminar with scientists. Maybe that's where I want to go again one of these days, back to that life and really perfect it this time. And I was in front of a blackboard explaining how one of the noble gases destroys the cell membrane of cancer cells. I mean, it's not that shockingly revolutionary, but I mean, I don't know where it came from. And I forget which gas it was. I don't want to get it wrong. It was not, what is the gas in helium? Helium. I was explaining how helium unravels the core of a cancer cell. And they were all, it was with chemical symbols and all that. Then I woke up and I went on, I Googled the actual research on helium and cancer cells. It's a very interesting subject. What's intriguing to me, Tony, is that I never studied helium and cancer cells. I don't know where this comes from. How does this stuff appear in a person's, subconscious, Tony? I didn't read about it, didn't see about it. You know what I'm saying? Where do all these things come from? And I don't know, but if you just read my book, you'll understand I'm a very intuitive person who is in a way somewhat of a medium of ideas that come through me, and that's what God, Faith, and Reason is. I'm simply a medium for ideas that have come through me. And I'm going to leave it at that and send you a free copy of God, Faith, and Reason to give to a friend or a neighbor. That's all. Let's leave it at that. Certain things need to remain unsaid. Remain unsaid, that's all. Let's see what else is on the websites. I want you all to do something for me. I want you to all go to the Drudge Report. I hope he's not listening. And I want you to see the book, God, Faith, and Reason, on the most powerful website in the world. I may not be seen in the San Francisco area, but let me tell you something. The world knows who I am, and they know who you are. 4 billion page views on the Drudge Report. 4 billion. Did you hear me? They make believe a man who has written one bestseller after another doesn't exist because his politics don't match those of the half-lizards. Too bad for them. There's a picture of the book, God, Faith, and Reason, on the Drudge Report, and then underneath there's links, Savage Finds God, and the next one is Talk Host on Spiritual Odyssey. I hope you will go there and click there to link to the articles that they refer to. The Savage Finds God is an interesting one, and that goes to my own website where it says, Savage says God is not dead, man is dead to God. Savage says God is not dead, man is dead to God. Did you read that anywhere else? No, because I created it. Did I create it? No, it came through me, like the dream of helium and cancer cells. God is not dead, man is dead to God. No, you didn't read it anywhere else. No, I didn't lift it from someone else. No, it wasn't written by some genius. I wrote it. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Sometimes people come along who have ideas that are original. And you can be as cynical as you want about it, but that's the way it is. Amid the cultural and political upheaval in the mid-'60s, Time magazine famously asked in the cover story, is God dead? Now a talk radio host known to defy conventional commercial broadcast wisdom by reading portions of Leviticus on the air is turning the Nietzschean declaration behind that question on its head in a new book. After 7 New York Times bestsellers, including the #1 Trump's War, Savage is posing the most fundamental questions of life in God, Faith, and Reason. God is not dead, said the host of the Savage Nation. Man is dead to God. With chapter titles such as Room with a View to Eternity and Lonesome Boy on Cold Sand, a touching, self-revealing first-person account, God, Faith, and Reason, is a collection of intriguing short stories and commentary that invite the reader inside Savage's lifelong spiritual quest. Like the mystery of God itself, it's filled with paradoxes and apparent contradictions, punctuated by poignant moments and unexpected turns that lead to life-transforming revelation. I'm not a holy guy. I'm not a holy roller. I'm not an evangelist. I'm not better than the next man. I'm just really talking about my odyssey, Savage said. I'm still questioning myself and my existence. What is it all about? I believe God wants us to question to the end. Savage's questioning has company in the great Jewish King David, who in many of his biblical psalms boldly expresses his perplexity and even unhappiness with God's ways. The rest you can read yourself by linking to this article on the Drudge Report. This is the Savage Nation. Thanks for listening. Back in a minute. So look, let me tell you something. Those of us in talk radio write books. And when we write books, we talk about our books for a week or two. That's what we do. It's around the holiday time. God, Faith, and Reason will be in every bookstore up front for the next 2 weeks. It's going to do well. Trust me on that. But that's not the point. The point is it's not just a book to be consumed and discarded. It has a message in it that should last beyond 2 weeks or 2 months. So I was thinking about it during the break. I said, Michael, someone listening to you might say you take yourself too seriously, right? Isn't that what you're thinking? You out there in Radio Land? Who is this guy? I like his voice, but he's taking himself too seriously. Who does he really think he is? Let me explain something to you. Some of us have to take ourselves real seriously. That's part of the control mechanism that's been used for ages in this country, such as, relax, don't take yourself too seriously. Or remember the 60s when the libs first started in a very benign way to say, don't be judgmental. Remember those words? Don't be judgmental, when you saw how vile they were, how disgusting they were, the dirty things they were doing with each other. Remember they were saying to you, don't be judgmental? My answer is be very judgmental. Just as you judge everything that you do in your life, even if you're a leftist, you do, don't you? Don't you judge what you eat? course you do. You judge everyone else when you sit down to eat, don't you? You're a vegan. You're a vegan, a megan, a hegan, a degan. And you say, well, I'm judging what I'm eating because it's important that I put the right thing in my body. Isn't that being judgmental? Of course it is. So you're being judgmental with regard to your own survival. And those of us who want America to survive have to be more judgmental than ever before. And we must override those of you who look at us and say, don't be judgmental. At least I think so anyway. Now, having introduced all of that, let's go to the book, God, Faith, and Reason. What does it have to do with the left and Marxism? It's the opposite of the left and Marxism. Let me explain it to you if you don't know. Now, you can understand this if you get the bigger picture. It's easy, actually very easy. What does the left believe in? Central government. What does centralized government that becomes too powerful become? All-powerful. What does an all-powerful government do? It controls everything you do, everything you eat, everything you drink, everything you think, everything you speak must be filtered through the central government. That's communism. That's Marxism. That's Hillary Clinton. That's the Democrat Party. What does America stand for? The opposite. Individualism. Individualism. Self-will. Individualism. Free will. Which religion teaches free will? Christianity. Judaism. We believe in God. God gives us free will. When you believe in God, you come to understand that God may have created everything and created us, but we have free will. It's the opposite of government will. Do you understand where this comes from? Do you understand the difference between the left and the right and how dangerous left-wing thinking actually is? Now you understand why they're beating people up, why they're attacking police, why they're killing the police, because they're coming for you. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've been at this a very long time. I've been reading everything I get my hands on since I'm 15 years old, maybe before that. I've been writing since I'm 16 years old. Count me on that one. And now I come up with my sine qua non, my number one book, the most important book I ever wrote, which is God, Faith, and Reason. And I will tell you this, it's not dashed off to sell a book. It is the book that I think could save America. Now, if you think it's megalomaniacal, welcome to the club. I think this book could save America. If I can bring enough people back to understand the difference between left and right, between God and Satan, between survival and digging their own graves, then I will have done my job. I'm giving you some examples of how the left in America is laying the groundwork to destroy not only the country, but people themselves, the American people. And I can tell you all about the Pol Pot story in Cambodia, how a little college teacher named Pol Pot went to Paris to study Marxism, and he became infatuated with Marxism, and he thought it was a great system that was very fair, and he wanted to bring fairness to Cambodia because he didn't think it was fair. There was inequality in Cambodia, he thought, after he had come back from Paris, Pol Pot did. And he introduced Marxism thinking it would bring fairness. But soon it didn't bring fairness, so he unleashed the Khmer Rouge on the middle class. Who were the Khmer Rouge? Who were they? 13-year-old thugs. He gave them red scarves, the Khmer Rouge, red scarves. The red scarves, the Khmer Rouge. Who are the red scarves in America today? You don't know who the red scarves are, the Khmer Rouge today, used by the left? You don't know who they are today? The groups that call themselves Certain Lives Matter, they're not the red scarves of today? Oh, no, you don't remember what happened in Ferguson, the lie, put out by Wolf Blitzer, put out by Jake Tapper, put out by Mad Cow? All of those people made up a story that was not true, and the cities burned. They are the Pol Pots of our time. They're not the muscle in the street. The muscle in the street are the Khmer Rouge of today. Where does it end? It ends with a mountain of human skulls. Just remember what happened with Pol Pot in Cambodia, because not only can it happen here, it is happening here. Everything starts with words, and then it ends in deeds. I will remind you that the Holocaust did not start in Germany. The Holocaust started in an intellectual publication in Paris 50 years before. It was a French anti-Semite who wrote about the Jews. That led to the death camps. Just remember, everything starts with ideas. And although Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer and Rachel Madcow may look like just benign neighbors, remember that their words are poison. They're poisoning the minds of millions and laying the groundwork for a mountain of skulls. And it can happen here. And that's my message for today. I just outlined the difference between centralized control, mass mind control run by the media and the government, and individual liberty, individual rights, and individual thinking. And the last thing the media moguls want is for you to think for yourself. They want you to be malleable, they want you to be easily swayed, and they want to lead you down the golden path of slavery. They cannot have that. How can one man called Michael Savage have more power over their mind than someone who runs NBC or ABC? How is that possible? Well, do I? I don't. They put out their product every day of the week, and they reach far larger numbers than I do. But the fact of the matter is they don't want any dissenting voices in this country. And I want to remind you of something else. If Hillary Clinton had won, I wouldn't be on the radio today. I can almost guarantee you that by now, almost a year into her dictatorship, we would have had a compression of the First Amendment. We would have had a compression of radio, a compression of television, a compression of websites, and people like myself would not be on the radio. Now, you may say, good, I hope you're not on the radio. Well, think very, very carefully if that's what you want. Because if you want no dissent, if you really don't want the true resistance, and you want to be standing out there with your neck on the block, go ahead and get rid of the people like me, because you'll be next. The guillotine is an endlessly thirsty instrument, as we learned in the French Revolution. It started by cutting off the heads of the counter-revolutionaries. And then when all of them were gone, who did the revolutionaries turn on? They turned on themselves and started killing each other. That guillotine is very thirsty. It has an endless taste for blood. The same is going on in this country today with the war on men. The war on men being conducted by two of the most vicious lawyers the world has ever seen. Demons in skirts, inventing smears without proof, destroying lives without any care for what happens to the individuals. This is a form of the guillotine of the media. You're living in a brave new world, aren't you? You know more than your mother did, so you think. Do you know more than your mother did? Do you know more than your father did? Were they just two quaint old people who went to church? Are you sure that they knew nothing? You think that because they didn't have an iPhone, they were dumb? You think that because they couldn't access a website, they were stupid? Well, I touch on this in God, Faith, and Reason. And I talk about being a teenager myself at one point and not knowing who I was. As most teenagers today don't know who they are. But they're sure that they know everything except who they are. They don't even want to know who they are. They don't want to read ancient literature. They think that if it was not written by someone of a certain particular authentic ethnicity, it has no validity. Well, I will remind you who built this world that you live in. And I will remind you over and over again, be very, very careful before you throw out everything and reject everything that you think is old for the new. Because the old wisdom may be the only way for us going forward. Sometimes the old wisdom is the only wisdom. Now, I myself do not read the Bible as a literal text. I will be very clear with you from the beginning. I've said that before. I am not a biblical realist, a biblical absolutist. If I were, I would have to be a murderer. I would have to join ISIS. If I were a biblical absolutist, do you understand what I just said to you? Has anyone ever said that to you? Anyone with the pancake makeup and the perfect tie? If I were a biblical absolutist, I'd have to join ISIS. Start killing people and torturing people and say, God told me to do it. But that's why I'm not a biblical absolutist. And yet, there is such truth and beauty in the Old Testament. And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. And the physicians embalmed Israel. And 40 days were fulfilled for him. For so are fulfilled the days of embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. That's in Genesis 50-1. If you think that you're one of these people who are above it all, I will remind you. What do I have to remind you? What do I have to remind you what you don't already know? You have not escaped the zoological order. It's the way of all flesh. And one day, I think all people listening to this show, no matter how bright, no matter how smart, will come to understand that they're not alone in this world. It's starting very, very slowly because there's been a media blackout. Once again, one bestseller after another. It's unheard of. 5 in a row, still not seen on television. There's a reason for that. One day we will find out who is blocking me and why they are blocking me, and it will befall upon that person to explain to their own followers why they were doing it and how that does not match with the, let us say, story they've been telling the world about themselves. But I'll leave that to fate. I learned a long time ago there was an evil person in my family. I never told this story, but it's in my book. There was a purely evil person in my family. But most charming person you've ever met. As some evil people are, so charming it's hard to believe. Everyone fell under this person's spell. Well, as time went on, he was an inveterate gambler and a little bit of a gangster. He robbed from everybody in the family with false investments. He put it into stocks that didn't even exist. And when the poor people in my family went to collect the money he said they were making, there was no money there. He was a little mini Madoff type. Well, he took my mother's life savings. I think it was not a lot of money, but to her it was $75,000, which 30 years ago was a lot of money. She was waiting to retire. She never retired. She was waiting to live on it with the little house my father left her. You know, and money I could give her, whatever, Social Security, she was going to get by. Well, she loved this guy. She loved him more than me because he was so damn charming. He'd go in restaurants and people would fall all over themselves. He was so cool. You know what I'm saying? You know the type. The hotshot type. You know the type. Took her for every penny. Took my uncle. Took me for some money, too. My mother begged me to get even with him. She looked at me and she said, you got to do something. I said, Ma, listen to me. Turn to God for vengeance. Don't turn to me. Now, you may say I was cowardly, but I'm not an Old Testament kind of guy. I don't take the Old Testament literally. You hear what I just said to you? I had faith that God would eventually punish this man, and believe me, punish him, he did. He punished him. He broke him. He wound up in jail without a penny. He wound up a broken man living nowhere, doing nothing with his life. He never apologized to anyone in the family that he robbed. He was still a hot shot when you went out with him. He thought he was a hot shot, still playing the Little Italy game. But let me tell you something. I leave vengeance to God, whether it's that case or any other case in my life. Everyone, I've seen it happen before. I don't know how it's happened. I don't know why it's happened. You say, how does it happen? I've seen it in business. I've seen it in my personal life. Everyone who has gone out of their way to hurt me has been hurt much worse by fate and by God. I don't know how it happens. And sometimes it took 15 years for it to happen. But every one of them was damaged. Every one of them was punished by fate or by God, not by me. I didn't have to lift a finger, even though I wanted to lift one finger, the finger that pulls the old S&W. But I didn't do that because I'm not a murderer. I'm not an Old Testament man. I may have the rage of an Old Testament man. I may have the passion of an Old Testament man. I may have the love for life of an Old Testament man, but I am not a herder. I'm a healer. And all of that is in God, faith, and reason. And you could see why it's not really a book about Bible or prophecy, even though that's all over the book. It's about real life 101. Maybe, just maybe, you can save your son or your daughter from a life of drugs or a life of crime or a life of loss or a life of depression by giving them a copy. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. So as the show comes to an end, I want to thank you for listening and frequenting bookstores and buying God, Faith, and Reason. We'll hear about more of it as the days go on, going into Thanksgiving. I hope you do buy a copy or two for your family and friends. The article I caught my eye just now on Drudges, lawmakers describe pervasive sexual harassment on Capitol Hill. I said, what? Who's bringing these charges now? I can't believe it. Jackie Spear, real hot there. They're all running after Jackie Spear now. Dianne Feinstein could claim she was sexually harassed. They can't keep their eyes off her, chasing her down the hall. Maybe it's Lisa Murkowski they're all running after. I've never seen anything like this. Jackie Spears said at least 2 current members of Congress have engaged in sexual harassment. They're all far-left goons. All these women who are accusing men are left-wing goons, members of the kind of organization that you wouldn't want your daughter to join. That's all I can say to you. Spear had previously shared her own experience of having a chief of staff forcibly kiss her when she was working as a congressional staffer in the 70s. Jackie, there must have been some kiss that you still remember it. It's amazing to me how these amazing women, these astonishing women of the left, who are way over the hill, they're so far over the hill no one can find them, can never forget being kissed in the 1970s or looked at inappropriately in the 1960s. They just can't get over it, can they? It's time for them to move aside. It's time for them to put it away. It's time for them to stop the witch hunt of men and get back to doing what they do best, which is go back to the legal profession that you left behind, which is an older profession than the world's oldest profession. This is the Savage Nation. Thanks for listening. God, Faith, and Reason by Michael Savage, coming to a bestseller list near you soon. Please go to the Drudge Report right now and click on the link to my book and see what I'm talking about. Good night.